Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lori Watson and the co-host of Foreplay.
I'm your co-host, George Fowler, former firefighter, your couples therapist who loves to talk about sex.
Woo! Let's discuss everything about the best sexual techniques to building your emotional intimacy, which is really necessary for great sex.
We bring sound, concrete tools to reframe your relationship problems and learn how to fall in love again and feel desire.
Listen to Foreplay Radio on the iHeart app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us for another episode of Marriage Therapy Radio. I'm Zach. I'm here with Laura. Today, we're talking about marijuana, pot, weed. I actually don't know too much about it, and it's actually not the main part of the conversation because it's really about what it does to the relationship, thanks to a listener who called in and asked us to think about it out loud, which we did. It's a cool conversation. Stick around.
I'm literally, this is the very beginning. We hit record, and now I'm just kind of catching up with you because I haven't seen you or talked to you for the last week.
Yeah.
Aside from us exchanging text messages where I basically said, Jason, who is he's our podcast editor, and he basically was saying, hey, what do I do with this cluster of an episode that came out last week? So if you heard the end of last week's episode, it's because Zach's internet connection was kind of pooping out. And Jason thought it would be fine. Both of you thought it would be fine because I lost my SHIT at the end of it because I was like, gee, dang it. This mother effing podcast is not going to go well. I just spent 20 minutes of my life that I'll never get back. And he wanted to include it. And you're like, just bleep it out. I'm like, no, I don't want people hearing me lose it.
I didn't even listen to it. So I trust you guys to put it together.
Yeah. I don't think it made the cut though. I'll have to hear.
I spent the week stalking YouTube because I didn't mean to be like a stalker, but we did it. We got a million views of the Vanity Fair thing, which I've never had a million of anything in my life. I was trying to think like if I've ever had a million of anything in any way.
Yeah, you have a million minutes under your belt.
Maybe, sure, yeah, or like grains of sand or something. But something that was actually, I don't know. I felt kind
quantifiable.
I felt kind of cool.
So anyway. You've been much more. I've actually been really surprised. So here's what I've learned about you. You are very like nonchalant, kind of aloof about a lot of things. And you're like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then like I've noticed this with Vanity Fair. We have an email with them and they're like, what do you think about this? And you're like, yeah, that sounds cool. All right. And you say that to them. And then you send a slew of emails where there is passion and intention and intensity behind it of like, my brain's been running wild. I have all of these thoughts. And like, where is this energy coming from? Because on the outside, you look cool as a cucumber.
It's coming from like 10 p.m.
10 p.m. To midnight.
It's like when my brain turns on. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we need to record some podcasts at 10 p.m. then because I want to see that side of you.
Hey everybody, I hope you're hanging in there. If you're anything like me, you barely know what day it is. I mean, it's crazy out there. And I know that for me, working with my therapist has been a huge help just to feel a little safer, a little saner. And toward that end, I wanted to remind you of our partnership with BetterHelp, that's Better H-E-L-P, which is an online platform designed to connect people with therapists in the area that can help them just talk through whatever's going on. They have done a great job. The more we learn about them, the more impressed I am. And the more we hear from our other listeners that are enjoying it, I feel really good about pointing you in that direction. And if you use our link, you get a 10% discount. But more importantly, I think it's just a healthy reminder that if you want somebody to talk to, if you just want to feel more connected, this is a great way for you to get better access to BetterHelp today. So check them out at our link. It's called Try BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/MTR. And again, if you use that link, you get a 10% discount off your first month. It is a subscription base, which means that you have a sort of constant access rather than than sort of a weekly appointment kind of thing. But I think, again, anything that helps you stay safe and stay sane has my vote. Okay, back to the show. Speaking of emails, you need to read them. Like when you get emails, you should read them, because then you're like, where's this information I don't have? And I'm like, it's in your inbox. I don't read my emails. Who do you think I am?
It's so true. I have been really bad about reading emails. Yeah, that part is true. I don't really.
However, you were telling me about an email we got. We should read it.
Oh, yeah. We had a listener. You know what? He called in to our hotline in case we haven't talked about it in a very long time, but we have a telephone number and I'll tell it to you right now. So, gosh, I hope this is our phone number. So it's 801.
It's either our phone number or his phone number.
Yeah, so, no, I was just thinking about that.
So maybe don't.
No. It is. So if you ever want to call and just leave us a voicemail, it's 801-810-6197. 801-810-6197. And when you leave the voicemail, we are telling you, basically, we're going to play this on the air. So we're going to have Eric. He's going to call in and give us a little bit of what his question is. But basically, I mean, here's Eric, and he's asking us about marijuana. And I think, we could probably say marijuana. It could be tobacco. It could be, like microdosing. It could be alcohol. It could be MDMA. It could be any form of anything. I came from Salt Lake. It could be caffeine. It could be like Coke, or not like Coke as in cocaine, although it could be that too. But I do think it's important that we talk about it. And I kind of want to be specific about marijuana because it is legal in so many places now. And it has such a shift in cultural norms.
Hey, Zach and Laura. My name is Eric. I'm from Buffalo, New York. Recently, my wife and I have had a couple difference of opinions on drugs, particularly marijuana. And I was just wondering your guys' opinion on when one partner is for it and one is against it, and strongly against it, and the ways to kind of make that work. Thank you.
So the main question that Eric has is, what do you do when one partner is accepting of a drug and the other partner is not? And I guess the other part of it is, what do you do if maybe you want to use or imbibe and your partner is strictly against it, not just for themselves, but there is like a core value that it's butting up against, that your partner would then be a user of that substance. So I kind of want to preface this and say I am not a specialist in addiction or misuse of any drugs, but I'm going to take my best stab at this because it's relational. And that is what I am an expert at. So
let me talk about marijuana just for a second, because this is one of those things. Like, I'm a marijuana virgin. I've never used it. I've never actually even been, I think maybe once or twice I've been around the opportunity to use it. But here's why. I'm kind of one of these like letter of the law kinds of guys. I mean, in general, around some certain things. And so, I didn't drink until I was 21, and I didn't have sex until I was married. And it was sort of like, that was just the boxes that I checked.
Wow. Hold on. This is new information I didn't know about you.
It's not true.
You did not. No, I didn't know that you were a virgin when you got married.
Yeah, no, I definitely was. I was not for lack of trying. I mean, I tried pretty hard, but I just wasn't any good at it. And then at one point it was like, I guess I should just wait this thing out, Yeah. And I'll say this too. I certainly also wasn't pure. I just hadn't had intercourse before I got married. I definitely was all over the map. But here's the thing about marijuana, right? Marijuana is this weird example of something that was, we were terrified of it in high school. And I was in high school in the late 90s or early 90s. And, marijuana was the gateway drug. It was the way you were going to end up on the streets.
Yes.
And then, I moved out west, and it was a little just more like kind of easier to accept and tolerate. And then all of a sudden they changed the law. And so this thing that was forever illegal and terrifying all of a sudden became just like, there's pot shops all over. Like, I drove
mainstream.
past 6 of them yesterday on the way to
Yeah, you
my
probably
office.
can't walk your neighborhood with your backpack on without smelling it coming from your like neighbors
Totally.
that you know and respect. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I have this really, really weird relationship with weed, just in the sense of like, I don't quite know how I feel about it. And it's because it's like, oh, am I supposed to be scared? And all these people, and of course my best brain is like, oh, it is what it is. It's fine. It's probably safer than alcohol actually. But it's just this, when this question came in, I was kind of like, huh, I have to like kind of acknowledge my straight up bias around here, because I don't feel that way around cocaine or heroin. I'm like, nope, those are bad, and alcohol is okay, and smoking tobacco is okay. Certainly maybe not healthy, but allowed. And then there's marijuana, which is in the middle, and I'm kind of like,
it's like the gray area, not sure about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat as you, except for I had my sort of like awakening to marijuana, acceptance of marijuana when I met my husband, because and I don't know if I want to call it pot, weed, whatever, but I don't want to sound like like this straight edge old lady that's like, are you smoking marijuana? But when I met my husband, it was very much mainstream 21-year-old thing to do is to smoke pot. And I definitely felt like it was dangerous. That was the way that I associated with this. This is dangerous. This is a dangerous behavior. It's risky. And it's very evolved, very much over time. And now to the point where it is just as common, I would say, as alcohol is. It's kind of like, if you're going to go out, are you going to get stoned or are you going to drink alcohol? That's to me the equality that there is. It's very similar. And in a lot of ways, people are choosing rather than to drink because the safety factor in a lot of
Yeah. So let's remind people and acknowledge that you're in Oregon and I'm in Washington State. So the law is the law. I don't know where this question is coming from, but I think
from New York.
So one starting point for me is probably has to do with the law of the land. Like if the husband and wife are in are in conflict and say marijuana is illegal, and I don't know about New York. I have no idea, but let's just say it's illegal. That actually frames the question for me differently than if they were in Washington or Oregon, because I think there is something about the argument that she may have, which is pretty simple, which is this is illegal. Like we're doing something that it could have consequences for us in a way that's not necessarily relational. And certainly maybe if kids are involved, maybe modeling something for our children that is, not the example we want to set in a civic society. And so again, I'm not like up on my law sandbox or anything, but I think that it changes the argument inside the home depending on kind of the law of the land. But if we want to remove that piece, then I think there is a second layer that I find relevant to this particular conversation.
So I agree with you. And it's interesting. I'm going to go ahead and bring up my mother-in-law for the 19th episode in a row. But I remember she was so against her son, my husband's use of marijuana. And all of it changed the moment it became legal. And I didn't realize that was what she was so against. Actually, it was kind of two things, if I understand correctly, is the use and the development on the brain has always been a really important part of her, is like, what is it doing to the brain? And there's not a lot that we know in these longitudinal studies of the effect of marijuana on a young brain. So that was something that was important to her. But I remember asking her a long time ago, if it was legal, would you do it? And she was like, I don't know, but it was certainly change the game. Because the legality of it was important. So yes, legality. And then the other part that I like is I had this as an experiment, something I had to do in grad school around this human sexuality class. Maybe you've done it, is going back and understanding where your ideas have been formed. And so what we just talked about was what you said is I'm kind of in this gray area because my history with pot was I grew up in like Dare Nation where everything was a gateway drug and fear was the currency. And I did too. So understanding where did your ideas and opinions form around marijuana. And I think that's an important conversation to have of like non-judgmental. Let's not talk about now. Let's talk about the past. What has your experience with it been? And how does that inform your decision now about your opinion?
Yeah, and I think even like, just as you were talking, I was kind of going, I hope that Eric and his wife are having this conversation, kind of the bouncing around of ideas about it versus just the head-to-head sort of combat that they may be having, yes or no, or I can do what I want, or no, you can't, or this is disrespectful. I mean, I think there is something layered in general around conflict and difference that just needs to be explored, because maybe with greater understanding, or maybe what happens is he goes, I never thought about the law and the setting the example and the consequences. Like, that is pretty selfish of me. Like, maybe that happens. Or maybe she goes, I never thought about that. This is coming from a place of, response to fear, response to, anger, or as an alternative to alcohol, which is more dangerous for you. Like, who knows? Like, if greater understanding comes about, then that could be really cool. I think every conversation that I have had in my office that involves the use of marijuana is ultimately about presence. It's about when you go to that place, you're no longer with me. And that is the place of pain. And I think that's the place that would be really interesting also to explore, because sometimes it's good or it's bad, it's illegal or it's illegal, or it's too much or it's too little, or it's a better alternative or a worse alternative. It's the second you clock in to your weed, you're clocking out of the relationship. And that is really lonely for me. And that's the part that I think that's the conversation I've had most often.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've also had couples on the flip side where when on a Friday evening, it's party time, it hits 4:00 and you start shaking your martini.
Or 4:20.
Or 4:20.
I know that much.
You are clever. You are clever. You start shaking your martini and you're pouring 2 glasses, one for your partner, one for you. That experience I have seen with partners where it's like, yeah, on a Friday night, we go out by the fire pit and we get stoned together and we're on the same page. And it is actually it connects them almost like, just like 2 people pouring 2 glasses of wine and sitting by the fire, and they're both in this experience together. And to me, it's sort of like the inclusion or the exclusion. And also there's some secrecy. I have seen this in my office many, many times where one partner, the partner who's the user, has now started doing it secretly, or they have switched where they're no longer smoking pot. Now they are ingesting it because their partner can't smell it. And it's become, anytime there's secrecy, that's when you're about to blow the relationship up. Yeah. So I would get out of the secrecy and get into conversation and talk about it. Talk about maybe how this could be something that rather than it's a singular act, like if one partner wants to get stoned, and that other partner feels like they're on the outskirts of not being able to connect with them, how could you connect in that moment? I mean, rather than just saying absolutely not, dream a little bit. Think about like, okay, if my partner wants to get stoned and I feel disconnected and excluded, what might it look like rather than them not getting stoned? What might it look like if they do get stoned? And then how do I participate? Maybe not smoking, maybe not imbibing, but how could I be included in this experience with them? Yeah. Is that too far for you, or is that like, are you with me on that?
No, I'm with you. I mean, I think again, what we're doing is batting ideas around. There's something you said at the top of the show, which was this idea of what about when there's like a really core value difference?
Yes.
And this is the part where I think it doesn't matter to me what we're talking about. When someone sort of declares their right, I have a right to get high, or I have a right, or you don't have a right to tell me how to live my life, or you don't have a right to, or whatever it is, that becomes a completely different conversation about what is the sort of shared agreement in the relationship. Like, what's the shared value set? Is it I have a right to be an individual, or I'm part of a collective team unit here? Like that. That's where I think that's a red flag for me, when kind of you don't have a right to tell me how to live my life, and I'm kind of like, well, you kind of do, in part because you gave it to them. When you said, for better and for worse, and sickness and health, and death do us part, and all that stuff. Like, you gave somebody a right to be intimately connected and affected by your choices. And I think that needs to shift a little bit when people kind of dig their heels in. Because sure, you have a right to live your life, but you also have a commitment to another person and to trying to kind of, we've talked a lot about the kind of the infinite game, sort of to push the game out there a little bit more, prolong it.
Yeah. I'm trying not to get into this and just stick with pot because that's the question, but also just the impact that it has on the other person. If one person is a user, it doesn't just impact you. I mean, it absolutely could impact another person. That if you're smoking pot, now, like you're fuzzy. You don't wake up in the morning. You're not the first one to like put your feet on the floor and hop up and make coffee in the morning. Now you're drowsy. Now you're cloudy. Now you're having a hard time getting up in the morning. Kind of like somebody who might overdrink, right? And they're hungover. And there's certainly a pot hangover that occurs as someone who, I'll be perfectly candid, I feel very comfortable with my own marijuana use. It's legal in the state of Oregon. And just kind of finding what works for me, what doesn't work. But I do find that if it is impacting your relationship or impacting the other person in a negative way, that's a conversation that you need to be ready to have, and acknowledging that it is impacting the other person or it is impacting the family. That when you are stoned, you no longer become the person who can then drive the kids to the emergency room if something was to happen.
Indeed.
So
I guess here's another layer too, right? It costs money. Like, are you gonna?
Yes.
Is it part of your shared sort of financial story? I mean, again, there's so many layers here, and you could, like most things, sort of pull out this topic called POT and put anything else in. Could be what did we talk about last time? Video games or something? Like you could put the same thing in. I mean, it's like, or exercise, or I mean, yeah. I'm thinking of this exact conversation I had where the husband had the complaint we're talking about, but it wasn't about pot. It was about CrossFit. It was about her like complete addiction to and commitment to CrossFit and health. And, and he was lost in the partnership because she had a right to be healthy. And I was like, yeah, you do have a right to be healthy and you're part of a team.
Yeah. Okay, so this is interesting because I do think it is a really healthy question to be able to say, where do you, like if I'm a non-user and I'm trying to explore, I'm curious, I'm coming at it a place of inquisitive and wanting to understand my partner's point of view, of help me understand just for your own point of view, like when do you feel like use becomes misuse for you, and help me understand where that line is, because I have my own lens that I'm looking at marijuana through, and I think it's all misuse. But you have a pretty clear understanding for yourself of when use becomes misuse. And you might say, well, yeah, when I wake up in the morning and I'm cloudy and I can't get up to go for a run at 6:30 in the morning like I want, then that's impacting my health in a negative way. But if I'm just getting a little stoned or relaxed the night before and I'm still able to connect with you, I'm still engaged, and I'm not like a sloth, and I'm not checked out from what's going on, I still feel pretty sharp, then that to me is like a fun time. I enjoy that. I think that's a great conversation to have, is help me understand for you what is use, what's misuse. Because I recognize my lens is different from yours, and it all looks like misuse to me.
Yeah, and I think that conversation has to go both ways, right? If I'm the user, to say, hey, when does use look like misuse to you, non-user? Is it the one? Is it the first time I hit this thing, the pipe or whatever, or is it 2-3 hours?
Sorry,
I don't know. I know there's like
that pipe.
I know there's pipes and pins and bongs and bowls and all this other stuff, like and brownies, and so it's like, yeah.
I saw where your brain goes. Listeners, if you just paid attention to what Zach said, he loves alliteration. And so what you just did was you added brownies in at the very end because you noticed you were on a B-roll.
And I needed a third one.
Yeah, you did. I know this about you. It was like, he's going to search for that last B until he gets it. I can just tell.
I was working with some clients the other day, and I was on this D roll because a couple episodes ago, we did decision and dreaming and whatever. And
Which was a great episode. If you haven't listened to that episode, you guys, that was a really powerful one. I've used it with my clients multiple times since.
But you
taught me something.
Thanks. I was on this D roll though, and I kept going to the whiteboard, which is on my left in my birdhouse, and I was like, oh, that's another good one. That's another good one. And I ended up with like 5 Ds during the entire conversation that we were having, and I got to figure out how to write something about it or whatever. Yeah, you do. You have like an article coming up. All right. So let's wrap this up. Hopefully, Eric, we were helpful to you. And I know that in my client load right now, I have multiple couples that are dealing with just this difference of opinion when it comes to use of marijuana specifically. So I think that this is probably actually going to be a really helpful conversation for many people. And if you have any feedback, you can drop us a voicemail if you want to, because I gave you my telly. If you want that again, it's 801-810-6197. If we like what you have to say, we'll play it on the air. If we don't, we'll just delete it and pretend like we never got it. That sounds amazing. Which is like kind of your thing, right? Like what email? What text? I never got that text.
Yes, I don't respond to your emails because I don't do a very good job of reading them. I am spending way too much time outside in the sun. I love our listeners, but I am also not a very strong admin. And that is how I live my life.
Right on.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us for today's conversation.
See you later.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Marriage Therapy Radio. If you haven't already hopped on and checked out our website, go to marriagetherapyradio.com. A couple of things that you'll find when you're there is obviously the podcast, but we also have some products available. And just as a reminder, Zach's book is available on Amazon. It's a workbook for couples, which is pretty cool, so you want to check it out. And you can find all of that on our website, marriagetherapyradio.com. Thanks so much for all of your time and attention, making your relationship better today than it was yesterday.